Hi, welcome back. I'm Camille.
And I'm Gretchen, and we are starting our series, our podcast. Thanks so much for being here. Camille and I always have a little time that we talk off set before we jump on here. And you and I were talking about, what Camille does is she's a counselor. She's what do you want to?
I help people clear their trauma, their past, and so we just talk about their life and kind of help realign them to who they really are and get them back on track. Process.
Yeah, process. Yeah. Let's talk about what that really is, because I think sometimes you're a little bit different, Camille, and that sometimes people go and maybe they just need to be heard.
Yeah.
But you hear them and then you kind of get into here's the why, here's what's happening, here's some tools.
That's right. Well, and look, I think people are, if they come in upset, they really don't sometimes know why they're upset. So people live in a little bit of upset, and it could be a long time upset they've never dealt with. And so maybe it's a trauma. And, what happens when you get traumatized or you go through a painful experience, we make decisions as a result of that moment of shock. So think back on things that you went through that were kind of like a moment of shock. Yeah. And so that moment of shock, you're frozen. You kind of feel like you're frozen. And you almost have to unthaw yourself. But with the clearing I help people go back to the moment of shock and take a look at where they were, what happened, what they decided about themselves, what they decided about life or their future. Because that's what's still running. That's the program kind of running today. You spend a lot of emotion there, a lot of energy there, a lot of spirit there, right? And we do spend our spirit in life. And so when you spend yourself there, how do you retrieve that? How do you go back and get it? You got to process it. You got to go back and look and see what you decided. Mm-hmm. And this is why trauma affects people in a negative way if you don't really deal with it. Like grief, people, if they have a huge loss, they don't cry. It comes out, I think Louise Hay said in her book, if you don't deal with emotions, it comes out in uglier ways, right?
Yeah. I was actually reading this book this week that was talking about especially with trauma and feelings, we process things in our minds, mm-hmm. and then we're actually teaching our body how to react. So let's say, for instance, somebody is keeping things in. They're keeping things in, but their body is rebelling those feelings that are in, so your body's going to react. Mm-hmm. So even if life goes on and maybe that trauma's not in your life right now, but your body still knows how to react. So any sort of thing that comes about that may not feel right, you're going to have the same kind of reaction. Mm-hmm. I know like when I get really upset, if something has really upset me, food is like the worst thing I can think about. I am not hungry for days. And so like when I was going through my divorce and stuff, I got really thin. Mm-hmm. Not that I was trying to lose weight, but it was just like, my body goes, nope. Yep. That just wasn't something that I wanted to do. But,
just one second about that. Look, mm-hmm. It's almost like when you go back to that moment when you're almost in an altered state.
Yeah.
Notice that. So if you can remember that for yourself for a second, and again, food was just, you couldn't even imagine eating, okay? Because it would have done what to you? I mean, you probably would have thrown it up, probably, right?
Probably, yeah.
Because you're in kind of a fixed, frozen state of survival. Mm-hmm. You get that? Mm-hmm. And a lot of people, when you're going through a major change and a major loss, it is, you're almost in an altered state. And so that moment of trauma, trauma can last for months, okay? It isn't like it's one and done, a second and done.
Right.
It is kind of a nightmare that's happening for a long period of time. And you just feel out of sorts. And that out of sorts feeling is chaos. So I think what you're doing is staying in control by not adding more to your physicality, because it couldn't have handled anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I even remember, even during when I first was going through chemo, and so that's trauma, that's stress, right?
Yes.
I didn't want to eat, but my body needed something. Like I remember I was standing at the pharmacy at Costco on the floor, like waiting in line, thinking, "Oh my gosh, I am so." This was the day after chemo. I was like, I just don't feel that good. I just don't feel good, and I literally had to kind of have a talk with myself, like, okay, you have to eat. Like, and I know you don't want to, but you have to eat. Talking about trauma, talking about how do you mentally and how do you physically handle that. You and I were talking about when I got the call from my doctor that I had cancer. I was by myself. Nobody was home. I was in my bathroom, and that phone call was really quick. It was to the point. It was a tone of voice I've never heard before.
From your oncologist or a nurse?
It was from Tina.
Oh, okay.
She was the physician that was,
Dr. Tina.
Figured it all out. And she's one that's usually jovial, and we're just kind
Love
of,
her.
very somber. And it was just different. But anyway, so I hung up, and I just caught a glance of myself. I was in my bathroom, not going to the bathroom, I was in my bathroom, but I just caught a glimpse of myself in the mirror, and it was like, you are not, I was literally talking to myself, you are not going to be looked at as a woman with cancer. You are no different right now. Cancer is not becoming you, it's just in you, and so quickly I had these moments, I had these feelings like, this is it, this is the law, this is what we're doing. I created rules. And and then I called my mom and dad, and I was like, okay, we're not going to make a big deal about this. We're not going to talk about the woes. I don't want to hear any cancer stories from anybody that that has either survived or died. I don't want to hear it. I don't want to hear it. This is going on, and they're, we are aggressively in the makes to take care of this. And, I made the point, I'm not talking about this. I didn't tell anybody. You knew. And just a handful knew, but I just didn't want to be looked at as, too bad Gretchen, she has cancer.
Pitiful.
Because I didn't want to see, want to see myself. I really didn't care how much, I didn't care what other people thought, but I just didn't want that energy of,
that's right,
you're sick, you're dying, and I'm so sorry, bless your heart.
No.
I made that decision through that trauma. This is how you're going to deal with it. And literally, Camille, from that moment on throughout all those months with my surgery and radiation and chemo, I talked to myself all the time, and I talked to the cells of my body, I talked to the chemo, I talked to the cancer. I was not going to make an enemy with something that was a part of me.
Inside of you.
I mean,
I hear that a lot. I have cancer. I mean, and who wants cancer? Nobody likes cancer. But when you told me that, I was impressed. I thought, that's a really different way of dealing with it. Yet I can see the wisdom in that.
It was a mind shift. It really was. Because, most of, and let me be clear, it's said in a loving, supportive way when people say cancer sucks.
Oh,
and, kick cancer's ass, or,
Well, no, that's just how you dealt with it, though.
But even when I help people now and they're talking to me about either their family members or what they're going through, and that's the narrative they start, I'm like, you're making yourself your enemy. You cannot make yourself your enemy. It's just like, for instance, if somebody is going through a situation where they want to lose weight, you can't talk bad about how much you hate your body and expect to change. And so for me, it was like, all right, you know what? I mean, after I kind of figured out how I feel after chemo, and I realized protein shakes were the one thing that made me feel better.
You could eat,
And then I was like, okay, so I'm figuring this out. I figured out a system, And then it became literally as much medicine as I was taking, I was giving myself mental medicine. It was constantly I called myself the sweetest names. It was never a moment of pity. I remember, Camille, being in the shower and watching the hair go down the drain. And I remember thinking, like, okay, I could pick it up and try to paste it back on, but that's not happening. And so I thought to myself, all right, well, I'm not going to have to shave my crotch. And there's some
good things here.
And so I had my wig, my Tina, and so I kind of immediately had to shift into what's my plan B.
Because succumbing to this is not an option.
No.
Going to the end of it or the failure of it's not an option. I was impressed with that with you. I am inspired by that, just how you were able to take this on, and it didn't take you down. You just literally jumped into action as if you were, again, you treated yourself like your own child. And if your little girl was sick or something, you'd be like, oh no, I got you. We're doing this. And you jumped into being proactive. You weren't reactive. You didn't let this take you over. You were in charge and you kept your mood. Like you could not lose your mood to anything. You kept yourself going, honey.
I remember, the first treatment you go in for chemo, it's just, you just have no idea what to expect.
Right.
And so mine was 8.5 hours. And
the first one?
well, they all were.
Holy
they all were.
crap.
But I didn't know how I was going to feel, and so, but as it turned out, that first treatment, I went with my oldest daughter Bailey went with me, and it was one of my favorite days of my life. It was 8 hours of us just talking. We weren't talking about cancer. We weren't, we just weren't in that space. And I told my kids, I said, Mom's going to do a whole lot better if we don't fear this. If you just treat me just like Mom, and we just do this, like this is just something we do. And my kids that went with me for chemo, I can't imagine how much strength that took for them.
Yeah.
I remember one time, one of the treatments, my son Cade was with me, and I don't have great veins. Yeah. They're kind of skinny and they roll around, and
hard to get a needle in you.
And they come in with a hot pad on your veins, and they just do everything they can. They're so good. But after about 8 tries, they couldn't get a vein, and I was like, son, please just leave the room. Like, you don't need to see this, because it was painful, and that's hard. But I do want to say, Camille, one of the things that with any trauma, and I know you help people with this, is your support system.
Oh, absolutely. Well, I think that's a huge piece of it. I mean, your body's going through what it's going through, but if you don't have people around you that are keeping you going, or you keep yourself going and you surround yourself with some positive and beauty, again, it's a game. It's a mind game, and you got through it. You were tougher than anybody I've ever seen going through cancer, and I've seen a handful of people. So it was something you were not going to let it beat you. And I think attitude is everything. It's everything in every walk of life, but especially in this kind of moment. That's the one thing I was impressed with, is you literally mentally took on this approach of, nope, I'm not, you're not going to take me down. I'm going to work with you. We're going to be a team on this. And you literally channeled some spiritual stuff. You were, again, most powerful, very, very strong.
Well, it's interesting because I didn't call Camille. I came in to see her.
Yeah.
And I walked into her office, and she just looked at me and she goes, what's wrong?
Something's wrong, yeah.
And we had a moment.
Yeah.
We had a moment. And then we were like, okay. And from then on, Camille, you and I carried on as normal.
That's right.
As normal. As a matter of fact, when I came in with Tina, you were like, I want one of those. Oh my gosh, this is awesome.
Damn good wig there. I'll tell you. Yeah, I couldn't believe it. It was so good looking.
But I think about God working in my life during that time, and how everything was really not only a growing stage for me, for my family, but really how things just lined up and fell into place. I had the best care team. I had the best, and I still do, best medical team, that I never had fear.
No.
I never went to any one of my appointments like, oh my gosh, PET scans, PET scans in general are there to tell you everything that's going wrong.
I know.
And the PET scan itself, you have to have this IV for about 30 minutes of this certain type drug, and it's
radiation. It's like
you're all by yourself, and and you're in this tunnel, and they play like this. It sounds like church death music, I'm sure it was supposed to be all uplifting, but I'm just like this sounds like something at a funeral.
Seriously?
Yeah. Oh. Yeah, it's like this pretty instrumental music, but I'm just like,
elevator music.
Where's Beyonce? Like, give me something better to hear.